This award is for the IPCC, for the entire scientific community who have worked very hard to bring this organization to the level of credibility and excellence that it represents.
On October 12th, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, the IPCC, won the Nobel Peace Prize, and with it, a seal of approval. On first sight, that might seem like a good thing, since it brings more public attention to global warming. Look closer, and it may be disastrous, since the IPCC may be wrong in some of its predictions. Welcome to Collateral.
IPCC has come out, this Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. You probably heard about them in the news recently, and they've come out with estimates for very small increases in sea level.
The IPCC is made up of 154 governments, representing all members of the United Nations. They produce regular reports about climate change made up of 3 parts: what's happening, who's going to suffer, and what we can do about it. However, the very structure of the IPCC guarantees that its results will be conservative. Its 2007 report had more than 1,200 authors and more than 2,500 scientific reviewers, which explains why it took 6 years to produce. The report is outdated almost by definition. And with global warming, the one thing we don't have is time. To make matters worse, those 3,700 authors and reviewers get appointed by the UN member governments, including the US, of course. Can you think of any time when you couldn't trust someone appointed by the US government? It still gets worse. The report must have unanimous approval by all 154 participating countries, many of which are oil-rich, powerful, and not predisposed to cutting carbon emissions. Think the United States, Saudi Arabia, China. There are other voices. Dr. James Hansen heads the NASA Goddard Institute for Space Studies and is a professor of physics at Columbia University. He's been an outspoken critic of the United States' excessive fossil fuel use since the Reagan years, and in 2006 publicly accused the Bush administration of trying to silence the opinions of unpleasant climatologists. According to Hansen, the IPCC report dramatically underestimates the projected level of sea rise. Specifically, Hansen points out 2 issues. 1, the report didn't include the melting of the Greenland and West Antarctic land-based ice sheets. But those sheets are already melting. In 2002, a 1,255 square mile piece of Antarctic ice, that's 4 times the size of New York City, broke off and disappeared in just 35 days.
If we look at the last time an ice sheet disintegrated was the Laurentide ice sheet in central Canada 14,700 years ago. And sea level then, during Meltwater Pulse 1A, sea level went up 20 meters in 400 years. So that's 1 meter every 20 years.
Second, Hansen points out what he calls the IPCC's business as usual mentality, which assumes that ice will melt gradually over a long period of time. Hansen says the world's ice will melt rapidly, chaotically, spiraling out of our control. To cut to the chase, the IPCC says that sea levels will rise between 7 inches and 2 feet over the next 100 years. Hansen puts that level 8 times higher, at about 16.5 feet by the year 2095. He also contends that if we continue on our current CO2 path for even another 10 years, the damage may be irreversible. We will find ourselves living on a different planet, one with no Arctic sea ice, one with worldwide coastal tragedies due to dramatic sea level rise, and one with serious freshwater shortages. The United States and China are the 2 largest carbon dioxide emitters in the world. Our government needs to act now to enforce CO2 regulations. Dr. Hansen proposes that all politicians sign a declaration of stewardship, promising to protect the environment and reduce carbon emissions. To see the declaration, go to his website. Remember, if Hansen is right, we have to act now and act fast, or rubber boots could become the new sneakers. Thanks for watching. See you next week.
Sources of public information have been taken over for political purposes. The science agencies now have political appointees in the Office of Public Affairs. and the information that gets to the public is tainted by politics.